What's up, Josh here. So if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering, should I get the iPad? Or if you already have one, you're wondering if you made the right choice. After all, it is a very interesting device and is the natural progression if you already own an iPhone and a MacBook. But here's the thing, the iPad often sparks this love-hate relationship in a lot of people's minds. In one of my previous videos, somebody commented that the iPad was the most useful and pointless device both at the same time. Now, I've been using this M4 iPad Pro for a whole year now, and in this video, I want to talk about my ownership over the past year. What makes the iPad great, where it falls short, and most importantly, is the iPad a device you actually need in your life? Let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want to go over is quickly what configuration did I go with and also what accessories I picked up. So firstly, I went with the silver M4 iPad Pro. When the M4 version came out last year, it really intrigued me because it was so thin and light. Like, yes, other iPads have been thin and light, but this one in particular at 5mm thin and less than a pound in weight got me intrigued. And then the reason I went with the Pro version is because I really wanted the Pro Motion 120Hz display. I have a whole separate video comparing the iPad Pro and the Air if you're interested in that. Now, secondly, accessories. So as much as this pained me to purchase, I figured that the $300 Magic Keyboard was a necessity for me just because of how versatile it is. As soon as you connect it, it just goes on using magnets, and all of a sudden you have a cursor and a full-size keyboard. By attaching this, you can almost use it as more of a hybrid laptop. And also, it just protects your iPad, so you can chuck this into a bag. Now, the other thing that I've recently installed on my iPad is this matte screen protector by today's sponsor, Paperlike. Now, if you are an artist, you've probably heard of Paperlike, but if you haven't, it's basically this matte screen protector that A, obviously protects your screen, but B, also provides a really smooth experience to your iPad. In my opinion, even with the screen protector on, the clarity is fantastic, especially when you're looking at it straight on. I don't feel like it diminishes the quality too much. They also offer a 100-day money-back guarantee, so for some reason, if you mess up your installation twice or just don't like it, they will refund your money. If you're interested in the Paperlike matte screen protector, check it out using my link down below. With that said, let's get back to the video. Now, a year is a long time, and in that year, I have went through many phases and thoughts about this iPad. But let me just back up and start with the first month of ownership, and that is what I would call the honeymoon phase. So if you do decide to get an iPad, the first month of ownership with the iPad is gonna look like basically using it every day. Like, this is gonna be the best device ever, and you're gonna love it. I think the display on it is fantastic. The fact that you get such a big display that is OLED and bright. I was using this device every day for lunch, basically, just watching shows and YouTube videos. Like, you can't argue that this isn't a fantastic experience. Just look at it. It really is a game changer when it comes to consuming content. Also, something that I think the iPad is perfect for is just doing light research. I don't know if you're into this, but I personally love to go on Google Maps and just go around looking for new restaurants in my area, or if somewhere I'm traveling to. Maybe you're on All Trails and you're looking for a new hike. Maybe you're going somewhere and you're looking through Airbnbs. And sure, you could do this on your phone, or you could do this on your laptop, but I think the beauty in doing it on your iPad is just the fact that it's so portable and lightweight. You can do this anywhere. You can take this, like I said, into your bed, on the couch, to a coffee shop. There's probably a ton more use cases where the iPad really shines, like doing your emails, editing your photos, maybe going through Notion or Google Docs, that sort of like singular task where you're focused. I think all of that stuff you'll soon discover in your first month of ownership is like, wow, this iPad can actually do a whole lot more than I thought. Okay, so that's the first month. But then you get into the other months and you start to push it a little bit more. And so months 2 to 4, I would say, was when I started discovering where the iPad falls short. Because despite how good it still is limited by one thing: iPad OS. And there's a couple of frustrations here that actually arose during this time. The first one is, where do I go to access certain apps? So take, for example, this is Instagram. This is the experience of using Instagram on the iPad. Like, yes, you could make it bigger like this, but then I don't know, it just feels awkward. So that's the first problem. There's often apps that actually aren't supported on the iPad. The second problem is that even if there is an app that is supported on the iPad, sometimes it's actually better to access it through Safari. The best example of this is with Google Sheets. So check it out. I'm gonna launch Google Sheets on iPad. This is actually the app that Google built. And you can see there's a lot of features missing. Usually there's this bar across the top with a bunch of different options. And then let's say in this column, I wanted to categorize it as a currency, like a US dollar currency. Usually at the top, there would be some options where I could do that, but in the app, there's actually no way to do this. There is a little 3-dot thing here, but that expands into not too many options. And so when you launch Google Sheets on Safari, let's say I wanna format this column as a currency, I can go to Format, Number, and then down here to Currency. So right there was one example of how do I access a certain app? What is the best way to access that app? Is it through the built-in app that that company has built, or is it actually through Safari? And so the next few months of ownership was actually figuring out when to not use the iPad and just use my MacBook, and when it's okay to use the iPad. And as you get into it, you start learning, okay, so actually the iPad is also not great for multitasking because instead of a cursor, you actually get a circular blob, which isn't as exact. And you also don't obviously get as much screen real estate as a MacBook. And then another thing is file management. The Files app on iPadOS is nowhere near as capable as the Finder app on macOS. And then sometimes you just wish you had some more ports. The iPad only has one USB-C port, which sometimes you have to use for charging. But for the most part, the theme for months 2 to 4 was that the iPad is not a laptop replacement. So at this point, I've kind of gone over what the iPad is really good for, what it's kind of not so good at. So what about the rest of the year? What did I learn? Well, the next 4 months, I actually took on like a corporate job. And so I was in the office a lot. Get in the office around 9 o'clock and then you're out of the office by like 6. And then you come home, maybe you wanna lounge around on the couch for a little bit. But really during that time, the iPad sort of took a back seat. Of course, I did take the iPad out to do some admin tasks like on Notion or doing some quick emails, but really the iPad became just your typical watch some YouTube videos. And so the takeaway here is that if you actually don't have that much free time, maybe you also work a full-time job and you come home and you actually already have a TV with a nice sound system and you'd much rather watch your shows or YouTube on that rather than an iPad, you actually might not get too much use out of the iPad. The most important thing I wanna get across here is that the iPad for a lot of people is an optional device. Nobody needs the iPad. And so yeah, through these months, the iPad just sort of sat there. Now, the rest of the year, maybe months 9 to 12 or 10 to 12, I actually did some traveling. So during this time, I went to both Iceland and Costa Rica, so a really cold place and then a really warm place. And in both trips, I actually had to pack light. So I didn't want to take my MacBook with me. I just wanted something portable with a big screen that I could watch some shows on, maybe answer some emails and plan a little bit. And during this month of traveling, the iPad actually made a big comeback in terms of like how often I used it. So the first use case is obviously on the flight over, instead of using that little screen in front of you, you fold down your meal tray and you just prop this up on the Magic Keyboard, and now you have this really nice viewing experience that you can watch some offline shows. And so I really enjoyed using the iPad for that. If you need to do some emails or something, pull out the iPad instead of doing it on your iPhone, or worse, on the MacBook, which is big and heavy. The iPad actually becomes the perfect device to do that. In those use cases, the iPad became a perfect companion, not to mention just being able to pull this out and watch some shows while we're cooking or at night before we went to bed was the perfect way to unwind and just made for a really great travel companion. And that brings us to basically now. And the past month, I've actually been really enjoying using this iPad, both as an entertainment device, and now that it's getting warmer again, I'm starting to plan more bike trips, hiking trips. Earlier in the year, did some snowboarding and was able to use the iPad to look through Airbnbs. And also, I've been learning a bit of Japanese on Duolingo, and so doing that on the iPad has also been a really great experience. And so overall, I wanna close with my summary and my closing thoughts. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking, should I get an iPad? I'm just gonna say, nobody needs an iPad. At least not in the same way that I would say you need a phone and a laptop. I just wanna make that clear. If financially it kind of doesn't make sense for you to get an iPad, maybe hold off on it a little bit longer, but if the finances allow, what I've learned is that the iPad is really great for singular tasks. The iPad is also great for traveling. And that doesn't have to be like getting on a plane and going somewhere. If you're going to a coffee shop just to get some work done, the iPad could be great for that as well. And then a whole thing I didn't get into is just like the artist side of things. So if you are an artist, the iPad is probably really great for that stuff too. But yeah, overall my thoughts on this M4 iPad Pro, I have no regrets. I think Apple did an excellent job on the hardware, which is really the first thing that drew me to it anyway. The 11-inch form factor perfectly complemented my 6-inch iPhone and my 16-inch MacBook Pro. The number between those two perfectly in the middle is actually 11. And after living with and using this device for a year now, I can say that it has earned its place in my tech lineup. For those who already own an iPad, I'm curious to hear whether my experience lined up with yours or if you had a little bit of a different experience. For those that don't own an iPad, I would love to hear why you want one and what you would use it for. All right, that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed it or if it helped you out, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on your way out. If you want this wallpaper, links will be down below if you want to support the channel. And as always, have a good one. Peace.